The War Council chamber aboard the Ketheri Dreadnought Crimson orbit hummed with a mix of tension and smug self-assurance. A vast oval table carved from black meteorites stretched beneath the shimmering war map, each alien officer hunched forward like a predator about to pounce. Flickers of holographic enemy formations floated above the table, highlighted with pulsing red tactical markers. The smell of heated circuitry and some sharp, peppery incense clung to the air, as if someone had decided the scent of impending slaughter should also be festive. Jamie Carter sat at the far end, not so much a participant as an afterthought. Two armored guards loomed behind her, their insectoid eyes unblinking, the subtle movement of their mandibles suggesting irritation that they'd been saddled with human-sitting duty. She slouched in her chair, one knee pulled up, fingers curled around a squat metal mug filled with whatever passed for coffee in Ketheri culture. It tasted like burnt rubber and regret, but it was at least hot. They hadn't given her a translator unit, but she didn't need one. She'd been hearing the same pompous alien babble for hours, with the same ritual cadence, and had already started guessing what each phrase meant. From the tone, they were in the middle of quoting the book again, capital B, always, and if she'd had a credit for every time some over-decorated general leaned on that thing like it was divine revelation, she could have bought her own moon by now. The towering General Zorth, his chitin plates polished to a dull bronze, spoke in low, grave tones. As the manual decrees, victory is achieved when your enemy is convinced they have already lost. Around the table, the officers nodded solemnly, some even pressing clawed fingers to their foreheads in reverence. Jamie blew on her drink, masking the smirk tugging at her lips. She knew that line. She knew every line they quoted, mostly because she'd written them herself years ago, at 2 a.m, hopped up on energy drinks and spite. Back then it had been just a joke for her guild's website, a satirical war manual for a multiplayer strategy game. The fact that it had somehow escaped Earth, been translated badly, and elevated to interstellar scripture was something she still hadn't fully processed. A smaller officer shuffled forward, projecting another map, an elaborate flanking maneuver around a Vroon supply convoy. Jamie caught herself mouthing along with the explanation, word for word. The river trick, they called it now, but in her original draft it had been a gag about luring low-level players into a swamp with promises of loot. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms, eyes flitting from the map to the expressionless, insectoid faces. They'd told her earlier, very pointedly, to remain silent unless addressed. Matters far above your comprehension, one of them had said, the translator giving the words a condescending purr. Now, as the generals bickered over the proper interpretation of a phrase she'd literally written to make her guild laugh, she found herself whispering commentary under her breath. Wow, congratulations, you just invented hide behind a rock. Game changer right there. The nearest guard twitched his antenna in her direction but said nothing. She took another slow sip of the awful coffee, watching them twist her old gaming jokes into strategies to determine the fate of worlds. The meeting dragged on, full of gravitas and poorly understood metaphors. Every so often, Zorth would pause and glance at her as though expecting a reaction, then return to ignoring her presence. She was background scenery to them, a strange specimen collected for study, valuable only in that humans were still a relative novelty in galactic circles. The irony that she was the source of their beloved tactics was apparently beyond imagining. Until, quite suddenly it wasn't. General Zorth read another line from the book. In war, the loudest voice often belongs to the weakest opponent. Remove his voice, and the battle is already yours. Jamie let out a short laugh through her nose, not even meaning to. That's not what I meant when I wrote that. The room froze. Every multifaceted, I turned toward her at once. Even the humming projectors seemed to falter for a beat. Zortha's antennae curled inward like claws. What did you say, human? Jamie kept her gaze on him, slow and deliberate, the kind of look that said she'd been patient for hours and had finally decided she was done. She set her mug down with a quiet metallic clink. I said, that's not what I meant when I wrote that line. A murmur rippled through the officers, the alien equivalent of a gasp. One of them clicked something urgent into a communicator. The guards behind her shifted, unsure if they should restrain her or salute. Zortha's mandibles tightened. You claim authorship of the manual. His voice made the title sound like he was invoking a holy relic. Jamie's lips curled into a half-smile. Claim it? No. I wrote it. Every chapter, every so-called divine tactic. All mine. She paused just long enough for the absurdity to settle. It was a joke. For a game. The silence that followed was thick enough to taste. The Ketheri officers looked at one another, as if each was waiting for someone else to explain how the universe had just tilted sideways. Zorth rose to his full, intimidating height. "You will elaborate." Jamie tilted her head, giving him that faintly dangerous look people get when they've been underestimated one too many times. "Sure. But maybe next time, don't tell the human to sit quietly while you argue over my punchlines." The stunned quiet stretched just long enough for her to savor it. She reached for her coffee again, eyes never leaving Zorth's. The alien general's stare was cold, calculating, but behind it, she could see the first flickers of something else, something that looked suspiciously like doubt. Somewhere deep in the bowels of the Crimson Orbit, an alarm began to wail. "If you want, I can keep the exact same voice and style while moving directly into Section 2, so the tension and humor keep flowing, without pause." The War Council chamber had been loud moments ago, a chorus of clicking mandibles and rasping antennae exchanging sharp remarks, but now the silence was brittle enough to cut. General Zorth's gaze locked on Jamie, his body still but charged, the way a predator freezes before striking. The guards behind her shifted their weight, one's claws flexing in anticipation of an order that hadn't come yet. "Explain yourself," Zorth said, each syllable clicking with restrained aggression. Jamie swirled the last bitter sip of her alien coffee and drained it, mostly to give herself a few seconds to think. She hadn't exactly planned on confessing to writing their holy manual of warfare. But there was only so much smug misinterpretation a girl could take. "All right," she said, leaning back in her chair, as if she were about to tell a campfire story. "Here's the deal. About 6 years ago, I was running an online guild. We were terrible, like historically bad, but we thought we were hilarious. So I wrote up this Advanced Strategies for Total Victory guide. Total nonsense. Full of bad puns, impossible scenarios, and stupid pop culture references. We posted it online as a joke." She tilted her head toward the glowing war map. "Somehow you people found it, translated it badly, and decided it was gospel." One of the junior officers made a noise like a kettle boiling over, his disbelief practically audible. Zorth's mandibles twitched. "We recovered the manual from a derelict human satellite drifting beyond your system. It was preserved in your own primitive symbols. You expect us to believe this was not the collected wisdom of your warrior caste." Jamie barked a laugh. "Warrior caste? Buddy, the closest I've come to combat is waiting in line for a Black Friday PlayStation sale." That made them pause. Her translator didn't even attempt to explain the reference, instead flattening it into highly contested acquisition ritual. The misunderstanding clung to the air. "You mock us," Zorth said, voice low. "No," Jamie countered. "I'm telling you the truth. That whole section you call the river trick? In the game, it was literally about hiding in a swamp to prank low-level players. Your Operation Taco Truck," she cut herself off as a few officers straightened at the name, clearly reverent. "Yeah, that was about luring people into an ambush with fake free food. I didn't think any intelligent species would take it literally." The room filled with uneasy clicking. Her words were dangerous here. Undermining the manual was like questioning the foundations of their military identity. But Jamie had already noticed something in their eyes. Fear. Not of her, but of what her admission meant for them. If the divine playbook they'd been using was nothing but a human joke, what did that say about the war they were fighting? Zorth paced in a slow, deliberate circle. "Whether by accident or intention, your words have guided our campaigns for 3 cycles. With them, we have held the Vrun Empire at bay." "Yeah," Jamie said dryly, and from a sound of it just barely. He stopped mid-stride. "Our current situation is precarious. The Vrun have begun anticipating our maneuvers. Our scouts report they now employ countermeasures to tactics described in the manual." His multifaceted eyes reflected the war map's red glow. "If you truly are its author, then you possess the mind that conceived the only strategies that have ever worked against them." Jamie saw where this was going. "You want me to write you a sequel?" "An update," Zorth corrected, as though the word made the idea more dignified. "You will provide new tactics. You will help us win." She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the cold surface of the table. "If I do that, I have one condition." The room stiffened. Ketheri didn't expect conditions from humans. Zorth narrowed his gaze. "Name it." "I get full command over your next operation." The laughter that erupted was sharp and alien, like someone grinding metal underwater. A few officers didn't even try to hide their contempt. The idea of handing command to a species they considered quaint was absurd to them. You have no formal training, one of the older strategists said. Jamie raised an eyebrow. Neither did your manual. And yet here you are, worshipping it. That shut him up. Zortha's antennae lowered in thought. This is not our way. The chain of command is sacred. Then you can go lose your war without me, Jamie said, pushing her chair back. She wasn't bluffing. She'd been abducted, insulted, and force-fed alien sludge in the name of cultural exchange, and she wasn't about to hand out more free advice just so they could misinterpret it again. Your call. The guards behind her tensed, ready to drag her away, but Zorth lifted a clawed hand, and they froze. His gaze stayed locked on her for a long moment, as if weighing not just the risk of her in command, but the risk of continuing without her. Finally he spoke. Very well. You will have your command. But understand this, if you fail, the consequences will be absolute. Jamie smiled faintly. If I fail, you won't have to worry about consequences. You'll be too busy getting eaten by the lizard people. The murmurs started up again, louder now, a storm of disbelief and reluctant curiosity. Some officers looked at her as though she were an unpredictable weapon that might detonate at any moment. Others seemed almost hopeful. Zorth gestured to the guards. Prepare her for briefing. Assign her a unit. As they led her out of the chamber, Jamie caught her reflection in one of the polished wall panels. She looked like exactly what they saw, a small, fragile human in casual clothes, hair a little messy, posture relaxed. What they didn't see, and what she intended to prove, was the mind that had beaten them once already, even if by accident. The corridor outside thrummed with the steady heartbeat of the ship's engines. Alien crew members moved briskly past, some glancing at her with open suspicion, others with curiosity. She ignored them, already turning over ideas in her head. She hadn't lied. The manual had been written as satire, but satire had teeth. Beneath the jokes were patterns, things she'd learned from years of reading history books, playing strategy games, and watching far too many 80s action movies with her dad. Her guild mates had laughed at her fake Operation Home Alone back then, but it had worked in-game because no one expected traps laid with childish glee. She suspected it might work in real life for the same reason. They turned a corner into a dimly lit staging bay, and the guard gestured to a waiting door. Inside, she could already hear voices, loud, mismatched, and anything but disciplined. So this was her unit. The door slid open, and she stepped inside. A half-dozen Ketheri looked up at her, each with a different expression: curiosity, boredom, suspicion. One wore what looked like an entire bandolier of glitter grenades. Another clutched a rifle like it might explode if set down wrong. Jamie took a breath, squared her shoulders, and grinned. All right, weirdos. Let's go win a war. The glitter enthusiast raised a hand. What is Home Alone? She smirked. You're about to find out. Jamie stood at the center of the cramped briefing room, staring at the collection of alien faces arranged in a loose semicircle around her. Each was uniquely unsettling in a different way, faceted eyes, mandibles, ridged cranial plates, but she'd already decided they were hers now, whether they liked it or not. The glitter enthusiast, who introduced himself as Vrek, was already pulling apart a grenade to improve the sparkle dispersion. The sniper, a thin, angular Ketheri named Zal, flinched every time someone coughed. The demolitions tech, Korth, had a fondness for humming tunelessly while handling explosives. And in the corner, the translator AI mounted in a hovering sphere blinked its status lights and announced, "I'm too old for this," before glitching and cutting off. She clapped her hands once, drawing their attention. All right, team. You've been fighting the Vrun the same way for years, using a book I wrote as a joke. That ends now. We're going to fight them the human way. Zal's antennae twitched. The human way. The translator's voice module switched to a gravelly imitation of a 90s cop movie. Dangerous. Unpredictable. Probably illegal. Jamie grinned. Exactly. She paced in front of the glowing tactical display, dragging her fingers through the projection to erase the neat formation lines they'd been planning. First lesson: unpredictability wins wars. You've been using strategies the enemy can memorize. We're going to use strategies so weird they'll think we're insane. We'll make them second-guess every move. And while they're busy wondering what the hell is going on, we'll hit them where it hurts. Vrek raised one claw. Do these new tactics involve glitter? Potentially, Jamie said without hesitation. But only if it serves the plan. We'll need a distraction, a lure, a point of chaos in the field. And you, Vrek, are chaos with legs. Over the next hours, she learned the limits and peculiar strengths of her squad. Vrek was fearless, but lacked anything resembling stealth. Zal's accuracy was unmatched, but his nerves frayed under sudden noise. Korth's explosives were reliable, if sometimes excessive, and the AI, who insisted on being called Ringo, had a tendency to translate combat orders into movie quotes. None of them were ideal soldiers, but that suited Jamie perfectly. The manual had been built on exploiting quirks, and these quirks were now her arsenal. The mission briefing came through directly from Zorth. The Vroon fleet was moving a heavy supply convoy through the Epsilon Rift, an asteroid cluster just stable enough for large ships to navigate if they moved slowly. The Ketheri wanted to destroy the convoy outright. Jamie had another idea. She tapped the display, zooming in on the Rift's narrow passages. We're not going to just blow them up. We're going to make them think they're walking into a trap, so elaborate they'll retreat on their own. Less risk for us, more panic for them. Korth tilted his head. But there is no trap. There will be, Jamie said. We'll just make it look bigger than it is. Smoke, mirrors, glitter literally. And once they start pulling back, we harass them from every angle. No predictable patterns. No logic. Just chaos. The squad exchanged looks, but no one objected. Maybe they thought she was mad. Maybe they were curious. She didn't care. When the operation began, their small cruiser slipped into the rift ahead of the convoy. The jagged rocks tumbled in slow orbits, lit by the pale glow of a distant sun. Jamie gave orders with quick precision, and the squad followed, planting decoy mines with blinking lights, scattering reflective chaff in the debris, and setting timed charges that would go off at irregular intervals. Vrek gleefully released clouds of fine glitter into the void, each fleck catching the light and confusing the Vroon sensors. Zal took up position on an asteroid ridge, his scope trained on the convoy's lead ship. Korth rigged explosives in tight bottlenecks where the enemy would be forced to slow down. And Ringo hovered nearby, broadcasting misleading distress calls in the voice of various human movie characters, alternating between Top Gun bravado and die-hard threats. When the Vroon finally entered the rift, their ships slowed, scanning the area. The decoy mines blinked like 1,000 eyes. Explosions went off at random points, sending chunks of rock drifting into their path. Vrek's glitter sparkled in the sensor feeds like a swarm of unknown drones. Jamie's voice came over the comms with deliberate calm. Welcome to the funhouse, lizards. The convoy hesitated, formations shifting as their commanders tried to assess the threat. That was when Jamie ordered Zal to take his first shot, not at a ship, but at one of the decoy mines. The resulting explosions scattered glowing debris across their flank, lighting the rift with eerie red and gold. Panic rippled through the Vroon channels. Ringo translated their chatter. They believe they are surrounded. They think the mines are self-replicating. Jamie's grin widened. Perfect. Keep feeding them that idea. The Vroon ships began to retreat, but Jamie wasn't done. She directed Korth to detonate charges in the narrowest channel, blocking their exit with tumbling asteroids. The convoy was forced to turn deeper into the rift, exactly where she wanted them. Every turn they made was met with another decoy, another explosion, another glitter cloud that looked like incoming fire. The chaos was total, and yet she kept her squad disciplined within the madness. Zal's shots were precise, never wasteful. Vrek's glitter bombs were timed to coincide with charges. Korth's detonations herded the Vroon like sheep. Ringo intercepted every comm and twisted it into fear. The longer it went on, the more Jamie could feel them sinking as a unit. Hours earlier, they'd been a group of mismatched misfits. Now they moved like they were born for this, still strange, still unpredictable, but aligned with her vision. Finally, as the Vroon flagship attempted to break free through a gap in the asteroids, Jamie gave the order to let them go. The point wasn't to destroy them. It was to send them limping home with stories of an unhinged new human commander whose tactics defied all logic. Stories that would make the next engagement twice as hard for them before a single shot was fired. As the convoy disappeared into the darkness, Vrek floated beside her in the cockpit. That was exhilarating, but also somewhat terrifying. Jamie smirked. Good. That means it worked. A comm ping from Zorth came through. Report human. She leaned back in her chair. Convoy's gone. We didn't lose a single ship. There was a pause, as if he were searching for a flaw to criticize. Unconventional, he said at last, but effective. When the channel closed, Jamie let herself relax, feeling the ship's hum under her feet. Her squad was grinning, or at least making the alien equivalent. The rift was quiet again, but she knew the quiet wouldn't last. The Vroon had just been embarrassed on a massive scale. They wouldn't take it lightly. For now, though, she had a team that trusted her, and that was worth more than any medal the Ketheri could offer. Somewhere beyond the rift, the enemy was already planning their retaliation. Jamie could almost feel their frustration, their determination to prove the humans weren't dangerous after all. She smiled to herself. "Just wait," she murmured. "You haven't seen the last chapter yet." Jamie's prediction came true faster than she expected. Less than 48 hours after the rift operation, long-range scans lit up with the unmistakable signature of the Vroon Omega Dreadnought, a leviathan of a warship, so massive it distorted the space around it. The thing looked like a planet had decided it was tired of being a rock and wanted to become a weapon instead. Its jagged, scale-like hull shimmered with energy barriers, and whole fleets flanked it like honor guards. In the Ketheri command chamber, tension rippled like static. Officers chattered in clip bursts, their antennae twitching in panic. General Zorth loomed at the front, staring at the hologram as if glaring hard enough might make the threat vanish. "They intend to end this war now," he said flatly. His eyes slid to Jamie. "If you have another human plan, now would be the time." Jamie studied the readout. Her squad was gathered around her, Vrek already fiddling with a glitter canister, Zal checking his rifle with quiet precision, Korth humming as he polished a detonator, Ringo hovering with an ominous glow in his lens. She could feel all eyes on her, waiting for something brilliant or insane. Preferably both. "They're expecting us to fight them head-on," she said. "We won't. We're going to pull the biggest bait-and switch in galactic history." Zortha's antennae curled warily. "Elaborate." Jamie pointed to a dense asteroid cluster drifting in the nearby system. "That's our battlefield. We'll lure the dreadnought into it by broadcasting a fake distress call about a convoy carrying something irresistible." "And what would that be?" Vrek asked. Jamie's grin was sharp. "Rare alien delicacies. Snack food. We'll sell it like it's some once-in-a-millennium feast. Their curiosity will do the rest." Korth tilted his head. "You believe they will risk their flagship for food?" "They've been following my manual," Jamie said, "which means they've been conditioned to overthink everything I do. They'll assume the food is a cover for something bigger, maybe a weapon, maybe a secret alliance. The important thing is they'll take the bait." It took 3 hours to set the stage. Ketheri ships disguised as freighters drifted through the asteroid belt, their holds packed not with supplies, but with empty crates painted in lurid colors. Ringo handled a fake distress broadcast, his voice alternating between heroic urgency and sultry advertising pitches. Vrek deployed glitter bombs into the surrounding void, timed to detonate in shimmering waves, giving the illusion of active minefields. Zal took sniper positions on 2 separate asteroids, ready to hit precisely placed charges to guide the dreadnought's movements. When the Omega Dreadnought appeared on the horizon, it dwarfed everything in sight. Even the asteroids seemed small beside it. Jamie watched from her cruiser's bridge as the flagship slowed, scanning the area. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. Then the Vroon fleet shifted formation and moved in. "Showtime," Jamie murmured. The first charges went off with thunderous flashes, sending rocks spinning lazily through the void. The dreadnought's escorts scrambled to adjust course, funneling exactly where Jamie wanted them. The ship's massive bulk edged deeper into the belt, its shields flaring as they deflected fragments. Ringo reported, "Intercepted transmission, translation. Proceed with caution. The human is here." Jamie felt a spark of satisfaction. Good. Let them be cautious. Caution meant hesitation, and hesitation meant mistakes. Zal's rifle cracked in the distance, his shot striking a carefully hidden charge. The explosion sent a cloud of debris across the dreadnought's path, forcing it to yaw into the narrowest section of the belt. Vrek unleashed another glitter barrage, the sparkling particles bouncing erratically on enemy sensors, making them see phantom ships in every direction. Inside the asteroid field, the dreadnought's size became its weakness. Every turn scraped its shields against rock, every maneuver slowed its progress. Jamie ordered Korth to detonate a ring of explosives around a large asteroid ahead of the flagship. The rock shattered, tumbling into the ship's projected path like a collapsing tunnel. The Vroon returned fire, massive beams slicing through the void, but the asteroid soaked up most of the damage. Jamie's squad kept moving, never letting the enemy lock on to their real positions. The whole engagement became a dance of misdirection and taunts, a living embodiment of the absurd strategies she'd once written in jest. Then, as the dreadnought tried to reverse course, the final trap sprung. A cluster of hidden charges detonated on its starboard side, not enough to destroy it, but enough to tilt its massive bulk into the gravitational pull of a nearby asteroid core. Its engines screamed against the drag, but the shift had already thrown its escorts into disarray. Jamie opened a comm channel directly to the Vroon flagship. "Hi there. This is the human you've been hearing about. If you'd like to avoid turning that shiny ship of yours into a permanent asteroid ornament, I'd suggest you stop shooting at my friends." There was a pause, then a voice, low, guttural, but perfectly clear, answered. "You are the author." Jamie's grin widened. "Yep. And I just outplayed you with glitter, rocks, and some very creative sound design. Imagine what I could do if I was actually trying to kill you." The silence that followed was thick. Finally, the Vroon commander said, "You fight like a lunatic." "Funny," Jamie replied. "That's exactly what they said about you." A grudging laugh rumbled through the comm before cutting off. Moments later, the dreadnought's weapons power down. Its escorts began to peel away. The war wasn't over, but in this moment, the fight was done. When the Ketheri fleet regrouped outside the belt, the exhilaration in the air was palpable. Zorth approached her in the command chamber, his mandibles twitching in what might have been reluctant respect. "You have changed the war," he said. Jamie shrugged. "Sometimes all you need is to make the other guy doubt himself. Works in games, works in real life." In the following days, she sat down with both Ketheri and Vroon envoys. With Ringo translating, she drafted a new manual, this time not as a joke, but as a peace agreement disguised as strategy. The chapters read like battle plans, but between the lines, they laid out ways to avoid escalation entirely. When the treaty was signed, Jamie stood back and let the aliens congratulate each other, her squad clustered nearby. Vrek was already scheming ways to weaponize confetti for peacetime celebrations. Zal had taken to smiling more, even if his version was subtle. Korth hummed quietly as he dismantled the last of their unused charges. Later, aboard her borrowed quarters, Jamie opened her laptop and began typing. The title blinked at the top of the screen, "How to Accidentally Conquer the Universe in 10 Easy Steps." She chuckled to herself and typed the first line. "Step 1. Sit quietly and let them underestimate you.